Hi everyone, thanks for coming. My name is Haley and I'm from CSESoc and I'm going to be the MC for the live workshop for our annual hackathon. And we have Andrew from Atlassian to tell you guys about making products that delight customers. He's also going to be answering some questions from you, so feel free to ask any questions on the chat and we'll try our best to answer most of them. So Andrew, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Oops, sorry, I was
muted. Yeah, all good.
Hi guys, so I'm Andrew. I'm an associate product manager at Atlassian. I also used to be the CSESoc co-president. You might remember me as the guy who changed our logo from the sperm logo to the current logo. So if you guys are old, you might remember that. Yeah, really excited to be here again. Do I just start?
Yeah, feel free to just start straight away.
Okay, sweet. Cool. All right. I hope you guys enjoy this. I whipped it together in a couple of hours, but I hope it's good because I had a very busy week at work. But it should be good. All right. Okay. Let's see. All right. So to set off the scene, like a cool quote by my favorite rapper, J. Cole. So he's not that famous of a product manager, but he's a pretty famous rapper. And he says that the good news is you came a long way. The bad news is you went the wrong way. So I think in hackathons, there's like two key problems that teams run into. The first problem, which I can't really help with, unfortunately, is that you don't actually end up building anything because you only have like 24 hours and that is quite a stretch of time. I mean, a small stretch of time to actually build something. So that's a big issue there, but unfortunately I can't help there. But the second problem that I see people facing in hackathons, and actually in most building products in general in the industry, is that you build the wrong thing. And that's what I'm here to help you guys with today. So I want to give you guys the tools and lessons that I've learned in my couple of months of at Atlassian, so that you guys can build products that people actually use and solve problems that they care about. So that's what I'll be talking about today. The talk is called Making Products That Delight Customers. So that's the end goal. So why you should listen to this talk. So I know that you guys have 24 hours pretty much to build something and you're about to spend like 40 minutes listening to me go on and on about like building stuff and go through all these models. So I do want to tell you guys why you should listen. So the first thing, as I mentioned before, is I want to teach you guys how we build products at Atlassian and just in the industry in general, and to give you the tools so that you can build the right thing. So you can spend this 24 hours productively pursuing a solution that actually solves a problem that people really care about. The second is to become a pitching god. So this isn't the direct thing I want to talk about here. Like I don't want to tell you how to make good presentations. I think Blackbird has a workshop on that. But I think beyond presentation skills, the really key point to actually having a really great pitch is to really understand first what you're building, who you're building for, and why you're building that. So this talk is really going to cover that and try to give you the tools and the framework so that you can answer those questions really well. And so it will eventuate in you pitching and really being passionate about what you're building. And lastly, I think it's important so that I'm not lonely. Like I don't want to give a talk to nobody. So I think it's great if you guys would stay and listen. Cool. So the main things I'm going to cover today. So first, I'm going to go through like an intro to making products. So this is kind of like product 101. This is kind of all the crap that they have on the internet, and this is like we had this huge 1-week course on this. I'm going to try when I joined Atlassian. So I want to condense this into like a couple the really key concepts and trying to go over that. And next, I really want to make it practical. So I want to focus on how you guys can take these concepts that kind of a bit abstract, and that we spend like 3 months building a product in industry and trying to apply it within like a 24-hour window. So trying to help you guys do that. And lastly, at the end, yeah, some we can go over some questions that people have and some tips. Also, like feel free to ask questions while I have this talk. If there's anything that doesn't make sense or anything like that, because it's hard for me to remember what it's like to be a student, because that was, I mean, wasn't that long ago, but I don't really remember all the things that what am I saying? Like, because I've been in the industry a little while, some of these concepts make a lot of sense to me. So I might not explain them properly because to me, it makes a lot of sense, but you might not. So if it doesn't, please let me know. Cool. All right. So into making products. Okay. So first, before I really dive into this section, I just want you guys to know that what I'm going to be talking about are like just models of the product process. There's so many different ways to build products, so many different ways to do make anything. And all these things are just representations of the world that we're trying to encapsulate so that we can explain certain things to you. But in the end, it's really up to you to take what will work for you in this situation and also what is important for you for the hackathon as well. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. Cool. All right, so I'm going to start going through the product process. So this is kind of just like the framework that people at Atlassian use to go through making products. But I just want you to know first that it's also important to know that like in Atlassian itself, actually not every team uses this product process. Like my team, for example, we kind of use this, but we've adapted it from what they've taught us into our team, because everybody works a little bit differently. Everybody has different preferences on the amount of uncertainty and I guess, and also like the way they like to build things as well. So just make sure that you're adapting this to what you're doing. So the first step in the product process that we go through is kind of what we call the wonder phase. And this phase is really about finding a customer problem worth solving. So I'll go into more detail about what a customer problem is. So basically, like, I think intuitively when someone joins a hackathon, they kind of think, so I think the theme today is about the coronavirus, right? So you'll probably go through your own life and figure out what are my problems with the coronavirus right now. And you kind of will map out a few sets of problems, and then you can kind of delve more deeply into that. So for example, for me, something I found as a big issue during the coronavirus is mental health. So that's me. So this is me starting the wonder phase. And as I go through this phase, what I really want to do is I want to take this big area. So the mental health is a really, really big area. Like there's so many facets to it. And I want to make this more specific. So I want to make it more specific. So for example, maybe for me, I think something that's really important is dealing with like chronic health issues in this period of time. Wait, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, so dealing with chronic health issues is really important for me at this period of time. Now, another part of this process is making sure that this problem is actually not only true for you, but it's also for other people as well. But I'll go into more detail of that. Cool. Second part is the explore phase. So this is exploring different solutions to that problem that you've identified previously. Now, I think a really big issue, especially with hackathons, because it's a very, very small window of time, is that people don't spend enough time actually thinking about what they'll be building. So most often I've seen people, they get a customer problem, so they get like a problem that they want to solve, say like chronic health issues in coronavirus time. And then they think of the first solution that comes to mind and they just build that. Now, the reason why this is an issue is because the first thing that you think about is generally not going to be that great, unfortunately, because it's just like the first thing that you've probably seen outside the internet, and it's just your brain jumps to that. So it's really important in this stage that you spend some time going through different solutions that you could possibly do for this problem. And then you also spend time making sure that that actually solves that problem. But I'll go into that in more detail. Now, the step after that is to actually build it. And this will probably be the majority of your work today. And like I said before, unfortunately, this isn't my subject matter of expertise. Like I did study computer science at university at USW, but unfortunately I wasn't that good at it, which is why I'm a product manager. So I won't be spending too much time here. And lastly is impact. So just try to consider if your solution actually solves that problem and like what you learn from it. But I also won't spend too much time here as well because I don't think it's as relevant to the hackathon. So cool. So now I'm going to go through like, I guess some what I call like guiding principles. So like these are the main things that I think are key to making products that people actually want to use. And I'll probably go into more detail into each of these phases later on, but you'll find that these three themes really thread through each of the ideas and concepts that I'll talk about. So the first thing is customer problems. So now I've mentioned this a lot, and I hope you don't get bored of this word because I'm going to say it all the time, is that you really want to solve actual customer problems. So things that people are really passionate about, people go online onto Reddit and actually rant about this for hours and hours, if you see people spending a lot of time trying to fix this issue or complaining about this issue, you know that it's something that they really care about. So this is the first step to making good products. Second is to validate. So what validate means is to make sure that, number one, what you think is a customer problem is actually a customer problem. And number two, that your solution then solves that customer problem. So validation really is building confidence in your problem and in your solution. And the reason why it's really important is that we spend most of our lives in our head, and we have like this internal model of the world. And it's really important that we kind of move away from this model and try to actually interact with real people and get their understanding of the world so that we can cross-reference our understanding of theirs. So a lot of people get way too stuck in their own head when they're building products, and they don't spend time to actually try to understand different people and their problems, which makes them end up solving problems that are only important to them and not to a majority of people. And this ends up building products that aren't that great. So I have a graph here actually, like, so I can describe validation a bit more carefully. So this is like confidence to an effort graph. So what happens is when you start off making a product, you haven't put any effort into your product or validating your solution, basically. But you actually start off with quite high confidence, and this is what I call the confidence trap. So what happens is you start off and you notice that there's a problem with the world, and you get really, really excited and really, really confident about your idea. And the important thing here is that you don't get stuck here. A lot of people have their first initial idea of a problem to solve, and they get really confident and they just move straight into building a solution to that problem, but they don't spend time actually putting in the effort to really build this confidence, but also to build true confidence. So this confidence here is kind of like a fake confidence. Like you are confident in the problem you're solving, so people actually have that problem, and you're confident in your solution, but it's not actually true confidence because you haven't put it to the test in the real world with people. And this is a process of validation. So you move from the start, you're not putting in the effort, and you slowly put in more effort and increasing your confidence as you go along. And I want to put this in more concrete terms here. So like things you could do to put in effort can vary. So for example, a really, really easy way to like validate a problem that you have is just to talk to your friends or to people you know who might have that problem. So that might get you some part of the way here. So you might talk to like 5, 10 people, and then, you know, 5 out of those 10 have that problem you're having. So that really gives you a bit of confidence there. But so now you have a little bit more confidence in your problem. What you might do next is build like a prototype. So I'll go into this in more detail later, but you might use a tool like Figma or like Balsamic, and you can build actually your solution and show it to people and get their feedback on that solution. And if you want to put even more effort, which will increase the fidelity, so this is like how real the prototype you're making looks like the final solution, you can increase your fidelity, and that can also increase the amount of validation you can have, because customers have to spend less time actually imagining what your product or your end solution will look like. What I mean by that is, like, say for example, you prototype something and you put it on a piece of paper. A lot of people have to then use their imagination to kind of imagine what it would be like to use that solution in the future. So the closer you can get to reality, the more validation you can have there. You also don't want to spend too much time on it, to be honest, as well. But I'll talk about that in a bit. So the last thing is to take risks. So this may not be as relevant in the hackathon today, because I think doing a hackathon is already a risky thing. So what you're doing really is you're putting 24 hours of effort into something. But this might be more relevant later on in your careers, or in if you end up trying to do a startup or something like that. So you notice here on this graph that there's a point where there's like a point of diminishing returns in your validation. So, you know, you might talk to like 5 to 10 people who might have that problem. You might validate prototypes or solutions to that problem. But at some point, you really need to invest a lot of time and effort and energy into a solution so you can take that risk and then release your solution so you can get more validation and learning from that. Because otherwise you get to a point where you can just keep validating, and you won't actually get more confidence in your solution. Cool. All right. So I'd like you guys to remember those principles. Those are really important, and we'll kind of thread through the talk as well. But let me drink some water before I move on. All right, sorry, talk too much. Cool. So I'm going to go through two useful models that I found that have really applied to my work so far in the industry. And I can also talk a little bit like a few stories that I've had applying to these models as well. Now the first one is called the Google Design Sprint. And I found this one really interesting because it kind of condenses what takes often like 3 months of time into like a 5-day period. And I think this is really interesting because what you guys are doing actually is condensing what will take 3 months into a 24-hour period as well. So you can take some tips here. So this is kind of like, so if you think about that product process I kind of told you about before, like going from wonder, explore, make, and then impact. At Atlassian, that can roughly take like 2-3 months, depending on the complexity of the project. Obviously, it's really varied. Like I can't say that as a true number. Like sometimes it takes a week if you're building something small. Sometimes it takes like a couple of months, but it does take a long period of time. So what this is trying to do is trying to condense that whole period into like a 5-day window, so you can actually get value out faster. Now the design sprint is all about starting off with a challenge, and so it's kind of like a hackathon today. So your challenge is to build something. I think it's like economic or community related in the coronavirus, and the end goal of the design sprint is to learn something or to build something that you can learn from, pretty much. So it breaks it up into 5 days with one activity on each day. So the first day is kind of like you make a map of your problem and you choose a problem to pursue. So basically, for example, I'll use the mental health example again. So I'm like interested in mental health. So firstly, I'll start off with that, and then I kind of like map out all the different sections of this problem. So mental health kind of has a lot of parts. So it has like, people with anxiety. So people might have anxiety about getting the disease and all that kind of stuff. People might be more likely to get depressed because they're not talking to their friends. So you can see how all these problems kind of connect. So you have like mental health, and people might be getting more depressed, and that might be because they're not seeing their friends, and they can't see their friends because, I don't know, like you're not allowed to go outside and all that kind of stuff. So you can see how all these problems map together. And by building this map, it's really interesting because then you can kind of fixate on which problem you actually think is most important. So for me, I would say, I think not being able to see your friends is like the problem I want to pursue, for example. So on Tuesday, what we want to do is get together as a team, and then sketch out some solutions to this problem. So I would spend like an hour, like in a room with a bunch of people, and we'd write like 8 different solutions that we think would be good in that hour. And then after that, we pitch it to the team. So we're like, this is my intended solution. And then everyone else pitches their ideas, and you kind of vote on which ideas you think are the best. Now, the idea here isn't to just fixate on one idea. What you want to do is you'll probably find that there's 3 to 4 ideas that kind of come out as the top ideas, like 3 to 4 ones that everyone really likes. And most people won't like the whole idea. There might be little ideas or parts of that solution that people really enjoy, and that's what you want to fixate on. You want to kind of get the top 3 ideas and draw out the best elements of all of those and combine those together on Wednesday. And so this is the process that's happening on Wednesday. So on Thursday, you build this prototype. So this prototype has all the best ideas that you have combined together. And on Friday, you want to test this with customers. So I'm going to iterate that point again on validating. I've probably said that word so many times. I hope you don't get annoyed about it. But you really need to test this out with other people not in your team, because everyone in your team has spent a lot of time on this problem and building your solution. So obviously you will love what you're doing, and you will think that it's the best thing in the world, but other people haven't spent that time invested in what they've built what you've built. But you're kind of just looking at it fresh. So you can get a more realistic perspective and a validated perspective of what you're doing. So So this is kind of like over 5 days. I kind of want to break down how you might be able to do this today. So for example, like making the map and choosing the target thing. This is a bit hard to do online, but you can use a tool like there's like whiteboarding tools. My favorite is Mural. You can kind of map this out as a group. And I would only spend like 10 to 20 minutes here because obviously you don't have much time. And then I would spend like 20 minutes sketching out different solutions together. So make sure to do it individually first a little bit so you don't cross-contaminate your ideas, and then bring it together. And then deciding on the best one can take another 20 minutes. And then most of your time will be spent in building the prototype. But also make sure to spend time testing what you're doing. So maybe you can test before you commit to building it. So test your idea, or like, is this actually a problem that people want to solve? And is our solution that we come up with, does it actually solve that problem? Cool. All right, so the second model I like is the Spotify's MVP model. So I think MVP, is a word chopped around way too much, especially at university. I think like everyone loves buzzwords like Agile, MVP, all this kind of stuff. And I never really understood it until I started working. And I really like this model here because, so you see in the first image, a lot of people think that the MVP is kind of like, you have your final solution, what you think. So say the problem is like transport. We want to build something that can help get someone from A to B. And someone's like, you know what, we should build a car. I think that solves that problem. And it really does, right? But what they've done here, a mistake a lot of people make is they get that car and they build like small components of that car until you get to the end goal. And that doesn't actually help you at all. Because firstly, people might not actually want a car. I think the car does solve that problem, but the customer doesn't get any value along the way here until you've built a whole solution. And that's not an MVP. A better model of it is to build it like this. So you're not starting off a car and trying to build all the components of it. You're trying to build the smallest possible thing that solves that problem. So that problem is traveling from A to B. Maybe the first thing you can build is a skateboard. And you look at the guy, he's still not that happy about this. At least he's not angry, but he's not that happy about this. But what's important here is that you're building something that you can test with. So the skateboard, you kind of know that, it's not really going to fully solve his problem, but the person can be like, you know what, I need this to be faster. I want this to have this kind of thing. And you kind of learn along the way to get to your car. And this is kind of a better model for building your product. So today, how you might apply this today is you kind of want to focus on building the skateboard here. So when you're thinking about your solution, you probably end up thinking about what the car might be like. So say, for example, they're solving the problem about staying in touch with your friends. I know this problem has already probably been solved quite well, but let's say, for example, that there was no such thing as Zoom, and then you kind of envision that Zoom is this thing. So you kind of have that as your end goal. You have to think about what are those little steps that you can do to get along the way. So maybe the first step could be like sending a letter to your friend, like a postal system. So obviously this problem has been solved way before, but kind of like to illustrate the point. So that can kind of be your solution, your first solution in trying to get along that way to that final solution of like video calling people. Cool. All right, so. Okay, cool. So I'm applying these concepts today. So first I'm going to kind of focus on the wonder phase, and I'll also go through the explore phase, and I'm not going to spend too much time on the make an impact, as I said before. Now, just so you guys remember, the wonder phase is really all about finding a customer problem that is worth solving. So again, a customer problem is like, something that people are actually passionate about or care about, and worth solving is probably worth talking about a little bit more. So when I say worth solving, it means that people care about this enough to pay for it or whatever you want out of it. So, sorry. I think at Atlassian, we think about people should pay for it because that's kind of what we're a business and we kind of need to make money. If you guys aren't worried about that, it's more like if something's worth solving, what that means is that it actually has a measurable impact on people's lives. So, people who aren't able to keep in touch with their friends, that actually has a measurable impact on their life, and that's how you know. And also another thing is the number of people that actually have that problem as well. So it's kind of like breadth and depth. So depth is like how much impact it has in their life, and breadth is like the number of people. So that's how you kind of know that something's worth solving, if it both impacts a lot and also has a lot of people with that problem. Cool. So the kind of activities that you'll be doing in this phase, and I've probably gone over this a little bit, but I'll refresh you guys. So first you want to be generating ideas, and you can do this in a lot of different ways. You can make a map, like in the Google example, or you could just talk to people about this problem, and they'll kind of like naturally lead you to different problems, and you can will help you generate lots of ideas. Second is to discuss. So this can be with other people who aren't in your team, but it's also important to discuss among your team, like what problem you're actually solving and to align on that. So I've already mentioned this before, but like when we're interacting with the world, we really interact with like this model that we have of this world. And what's really great about working in a team is that everybody has a different model and different understanding about the world, and has different experiences and histories and pasts. And what you want to do is to bring all those ideas together and align on what you think a customer problem is. Because if you think that something is an issue, that's not actually that great of a, that's not actually that much of a confidence booster or a validating booster. But if everybody on your team thinks that this is an issue, that should give you a lot more confidence that this could actually be a thing worth solving. And thirdly, you want to validate. So I will go into this in more detail about like different ways you could do this. So cool. So specific examples of different things you can do to find some problems and to validate them. The first thing is to trust your intuition a little bit. So I know I've talked a lot about like, you know, you're stuck in your own head, you have your own model, like you don't know anything, but that's not always true. Well, it is true, but like if you are the intended customer for your solution, so if you're solving a problem that you have a lot of personal investment or interest in, you can trust your intuition a little bit more. You can let that, what you should do is not let that make you overly confident about your solution, but you can let you can guide yourself along to different problems in that space because you have an intimate understanding of that. And that's a really great way to map out that solution and choose a problem within that space. So that's the first thing. The second thing you can do is making use of friends. So this is a really big issue for me because I don't have many friends, but for you guys, it shouldn't be too hard. So what you want to do is you want to find friends that have the same problem as you have, or friends of friends, or, you know, so you can ask other friends, like, do you have this problem, like kind of thing. And something you also can do as well, because this is a hackathon and like CSESoc is a really great community. You can also ask in the Slack channel, for example. You can ask in the group. I'm not sure if there's a hackathon Facebook group or in the event page or something like that. For people who have this problem that you have that you're trying to solve. So obviously the closer they are, the more likely they'll help. So try and hit your close friends first because like, you know, they have incentive to help you. Yeah, cool. So the third thing is empathy. I'll probably talk about this more in the explore part of this talk. But this thing is all really about trying to put yourself in the shoes of someone who has that issue. So what problems would they face? How big is it in their day-to-day? Kind of like imagine like what would it be like to be this person with this problem? And what are the things you feel about this problem? And what are the issues you have in your day? This is another really great way for you to find out different problems. And the last thing is research, really. So other avenues for research. So competitors is a really great one. It might not be as relevant today, but we use this a lot in the industry. So it's like you're solving a problem. If it's actually a really important problem, there'll definitely be other people in the world who are like have solved that problem already, maybe not as well as you could, and that's maybe why you want to solve it. There's other people who have who've seen this thing as an issue and try to make a solution for that. So for example, the mental health example is a huge industry. Like so many people have built so many different apps and like articles and things about that. Like there's meditation apps and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite easy to see that it is a really big problem because there's so many people already pouring in money and investing into that. And Reddit is also a good example. So I use this a lot at Atlassian because so I'm working in like the kind of IT space. And there's like this Reddit called Reddit Ask Admin or something like that. And like all the IT admins, they go on there and they complain about their job and like all the issues they have. And like it's a really great place for them to vent. And like that's a treasure trove for validation and finding out different customer problems. So they're all, you know, it's like, I think it's like their support group or something, but it's really great. Yeah, and there's other forums you can find. So obviously, this is probably more for you guys to find, and also articles. So there's definitely been a lot of articles written about the coronavirus. It's a really hot topic. And in these articles, you can probably find different problems that people are facing that they've written about. So yeah, cool. And some other useful tools. So Jobs to be Done is a really great framework. I think we use this a lot in Atlassian. And it really helps you understand like the situation that the customers will face and their motivation for doing what they want to do and kind of what they expect of the outcome. So it's really simple. You just write in a sentence like, when something happens, I want to do something, and then so I can blah. So I'll use the the friends example. So when I don't have friends, I want to have people to talk to so that I cannot be lonely. So that kind of like frames the problem that you're facing into like into the situation, the motivation, and the outcome that you want. Cool. And this one is like super long, so you don't have to like read this all now, but I would kind of like bookmark this. So Marty Kagan's assessing opportunity. So this is a great list of questions for you to assess if your problem is worth solving, if your solution works to solve that problem. And this will be really great to frame your pitch, for example, because it kind of goes through all the right questions to prove to the judges and to prove to the judges that what you've done here is really meaningful and actually solve the problem that customers have. So I would keep this in mind for the pitch. Cool. How am I doing for time? Oh, okay, I'm all good. Yeah, sorry for talking too much. Yeah, okay, cool. Oh, so I just want to go through a few pitfalls for this section as well. So the first one is a lack of specificity. I think this is the one that is probably the most important for you guys today. So I'll use that same example again. So today I started off with the problem of mental health in the coronavirus. Now, think about that problem. Think about how big of a space that problem exists in. Like, think about how many companies and how many products are already out there to solve this problem. Like, it's not really something, oh wow, I just realized I did not update these slides properly, but okay, oops. What was I saying? Oh yeah, sorry. So think about how many problems and stuff are actually in that space and how hard it would be for you to build something that could solve that whole problem in 24 hours. So it's really, really important that you start off with this big problem and you kind of like make it more specific as you go along throughout the day, or I mean, in the 30 minutes that you probably have to do that. So you kind of want to dig deeper and deeper and deeper until you actually hit a problem that, you know, would be ambitious to solve, but is actually potentially solvable by you guys in 24 hours. Second thing is I like to share understanding. This isn't as important today, but is really implied in the industry. You want to make sure that everyone in your team knows exactly what you're doing and is aligned on that. Otherwise, you'll end up building a fractured product that doesn't really work. And third, taking too long, especially for today. You guys have 24 hours. Don't spend too long in the whole problem phase. Like, a lot of people are scared of uncertainty and all that kind of stuff, but it's really important to keep moving forward so that you can actually build something and test something. Cool. You know, the whole taking risks thing. Okay, let me drink some water. Whew. Oh man, I'm not used to talking so much. Okay, cool. So the second part I'm going to talk about, I think, is the explore phase. And just remind you guys, this is really about exploring multiple solutions to that customer problem you identified previously. And I want to emphasize it's really important to explore those multiple solutions. So first thing is the divergent solutioning. And this, as I mentioned before, this is going to be done like as an individual exercise, and you can kind of synthesize it together after that. And then you want to build something you can learn from. So I think that this is the task for you guys today. Like, you guys shouldn't set out to build something that will actually solve this problem really well. You want to build that skateboard that I mentioned in those past slides. You want to build something that kind of like does it, but it doesn't make people happy. But it's something that you really learn from, and that's the goal of the you guys today. And the third step you want to do is to validate what you're building. So make sure you're actually talking to customers, make sure you're actually putting what you've done in front of people and getting their reaction to it so you can see if you're on the right track. Cool. So here are a few ideas or things that we use in Atlassian to kind of like go through this phase of work. The first thing I do is a crazy 8. So I've done this a few times actually. I think it's really great. So first you kind of divide a paper into 8 bits. I don't have paper, I was trying to find something to show you guys, but you kind of divide it, you like fold it like lengthways and then down like this. And you spend 10 minutes like individually coming up with 8 solutions. But the key here is that each solution needs to be a little bit crazier than the one before. So this kind of forces your mind to think about more divergent, interesting solutions. And it's really important here because this is actually really interesting because I read a psychological study a couple of months back, I think. And they found that people who were able to suppress the first few ideas that came up in their mind were more creative. And I guess this probably goes back to the idea of like the first few ideas you come up with are more likely ideas that you've kind of like just taken from what you've seen. So that the more time you actually spend in that state of discomfort of not knowing the solution to the problem, the more time your mind can spend to generate ideas uniquely. And the third step here is just to share it with your team and to get an assessment of other people, what other people think are cool, because that can help you validate your solution. Cool. The second is a customer journey map. This kind of connects to that point of empathy. And really what this is about is like trying to map out what a user or a person facing your problem, the steps they'll kind of go through to solve this problem today. So yeah, you kind of start off with those steps, so like the user flow, and then you kind of assess like how they might feel about each step. What is a good example I can use? In terms of like the messaging example, like there might be a few steps to sending a letter to somebody. It could be like you get some stationery, you write that letter, and then you put it in an envelope, and then you kind of mail it. So sorry, this is to solve the problem of like staying in touch with friends. And then you kind of like map out the different, how they feel about it in each step. So, and then you might find that, so then mail out the letter, and then they kind of have to wait for a reply, and that takes like 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks of waiting, they feel like really anxious, and they really want to talk to their friends more. And that's kind of how you can identify within this whole map of the journey where the real issue is. And the real issue is in that waiting period, right? It's like, they don't want to wait for that letter to come back, it takes way too long. So that's how we kind of came up with the next iteration of that solution, which is like, calling people. Yeah. And then lastly, a few tools that you can kind of use to prototype your solution. So the first thing obviously is like paper and pen, Draw.io and Balsamiq. These are really good low fidelity tools. This means it's really fast to build, but it doesn't look that close to what you actually might build in the end. And Figma is like, I think it's free, is better for high fidelity. So something that is a prototype tool that will look closer to what you're going to build in the end. All right. Cool. Oh wow, it's validating again. So validating in the wonder phase, so the phase where you're kind of going after different problems you could solve, is kind of, you can also apply those learnings here, but also wanted to give you some additional thoughts. So this is especially to do when you're talking to customers and people who actually have that problem. It's really, really important that you really try to dig at the reason why they are facing that problem. And so you're trying to dig out the root problem or the problem of greatest depth. So for example, let's say the mental health example. So say you're talking to me and then I'm like, what is your problem in the coronavirus? And then I can be like, oh, I'm feeling really sad these days. And then you can ask why. So why are you feeling sad? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm a bit lonely. And then why are you lonely? Well, I don't get to see my friends as often during the coronavirus. And then why can't you see your friends as often? And well, obviously because of the coronavirus, because you can't go outside. That's probably what they'll ask. And then you ask, why is that? Like, why haven't you, you can still message people and stuff like that. And then they might say, well, I guess, talking online isn't like as good as talking face to face. And then you kind of get to the root of the issue. So that might not be the root of the issue. That might not be the root of the issue, but it's just an example. But you kind of dig down the layer of customer problems essentially, and getting at the root cause or the problem that they really care about. Just make sure you don't ask why too many times in a row. It gets really annoying, to be honest. So try to do it a bit more subtly. Second point is don't ask leading questions. So what I mean by this is basically just like, for example, don't ask things like, are you depressed during this coronavirus time? Because you're kind of giving them a potential answer in that sentence. Instead, you want to ask more open-ended questions like, how are you feeling during this period of time? And then they might bring forth the answer of depressed, and you're kind of giving them the answer as you go along. And the third thing is to use silence. This is really interesting. I don't love doing this, but it's a really great tool in customer interviews that I've been in. Kind of like just, you ask them a question and then they give a response, and then you don't actually respond back straight away. And there's like this moment of silence and everyone gets a bit awkward. So kind of like this. And then someone feels like they feel the need to talk more. And it's a really great way to get them to just keep talking about something and to go even deeper than what they originally would have, because they kind of feel awkward about this silence. So I think that's a really great tool as well. Cool. All right, that's pretty much it. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. And I did have like, I was gonna write another page about hot tips here, but I kind of ran out of time. But off the top of my head, I would say either use Trello or Mural, because I know you guys are working like remotely, or I think you guys are. So Trello or Mural, those are two really great tools, I think, for working remotely and kind of like synchronizing your work. And I guess have fun. I think that's always a good tip or suggestion. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat.
Thank you so much, Andrew. So we actually had a few questions
Oh,
in the chat.
oh wow, I didn't
while you're
realize people were,
talking.
oh my gosh, because normally it kind of like, it pops up like, oh, someone sent a message.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was like,
No, it's all right. Like I think you can just answer it right now. Yeah.
okay,
So
sweet. That's
yeah, the
good.
first question is, how do you avoid the confidence trap?
Yeah, right. Okay, that's a good question. Oh, you guys still see my screen? Still see it? Okay. Yeah, so how do you avoid the confidence trap? I think I probably spent the whole talk talking about this pretty much, but it's like making sure that you actually talk to real people, not just yourself or your team, about what you're doing, pretty much. I think, how can I, a good example of that? Like, yeah, I think that's pretty much the answer. Yeah, I can't think of a good example for that.
That's fine. I think
Oh,
another
wait.
question.
Oh, someone said there goes my confidence. Oh, I do want to say, because someone said there goes my confidence low after that. This part of the thing is really interesting because like you start off with like a confidence in your solution, and then when you start validating it, you kind of like realize that what you've done or what you think about the problem isn't actually as true. But you see here that over time you kind of increase your confidence again. And what this is like, it really actually means that you have a better understanding of the problem space and the customer problem, because you started off with a lot of confidence because, that's kind of how humans are, right? You get a new idea, you're really excited about it, you're really confident about it, and then you test it out and then you realize, oh shit, it maybe isn't as simple as I thought. But if you really put in that effort and that time, you don't have a lot of time today, but like if you put in the effort, you kind of build that confidence up again. Cool.
Awesome. The next question is there an online tool for prototyping we can use where we can see other people's edits along the way?
Other people's edits along the way.
I'm not sure about other people's edits along the way. So this is like the different tools that I suggest. I think Figma, you can do it collaboratively. So you kind of see other people editing as you go, but I'm not sure about history of edits. Yeah.
Oh, so Nikki's saying there's Figma's, there's a tool to use multi-user.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Figma does multi-user. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But in the ideation phase, in the wonder phase, when you're trying to figure out the custom problem, I would really use Mural. It's kind of like a whiteboard, but like you can kind of like put post-it notes. It's really great. Yeah.
So the next question is actually from me. So
Yeah,
I just
sure.
wanted to know, what are some good questions to ask your potential users to validate your idea without like leading them too much?
Without leading too much. I think so. That's a really hard question to answer because it really depends on like the problem you're solving. Like I personally would just do like Google a couple articles about asking leading questions and kind of see there. But the gist really is that you want to ask as neutral of a question as possible. So like, what's another example? Like asking questions that are kind of really open-ended, like how are you feeling today, or what do you feel about this? That don't give them any indication of what you expect them to say or answer is really important. Because you don't want to bundle in within that question the answer pretty much. Like, so an open-ended question is like, how do you feel about this? Another closed-ended question or like a leading question is like, do you like this solution? So you're kind of implying that they should like it, that there's an implication there that if you don't like it, then it's like a bad thing kind of thing. So you're kind of forcing them to answer in a certain way.
Yeah, I don't think there's any more questions on the chat at the moment. Do you have any more like tips to share about like hackathons if you have experience?
Tips. Oh no, yeah, I can't think of anything right now. I guess I think with hackathons, especially like I think it's really important not to spend an overly too much time on the actual building. This might sound a bit weird, but like from my personal experience, I think people win hackathons when their solution is really interesting, but also when their pitches are really great and show really good understanding that they've done their research and that they kind of have an empathy and and there's like a little bit of proof that what they're doing is really important there. Yeah, I guess that would be my tip. What's Comp 3511? I haven't heard of that.
It's a computer human interaction
Oh
course.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's basically what we're doing right now. It's basically for like user experience, validating ideas, coming up with like solutions and like customer interviews.
Yeah, I remember doing that course. To be honest, I found it a little bit detached from like what the reality is. Like I don't feel like it actually helped me as much in my job because everything is so much more like more nebulous and like there's actually never really a clear answer. I find that you spend a lot of time validating your solution and then you get to a point of confidence that you're not like, you're like 50% confident that there's really nothing else you can do. Kind of just have to build it. This is just like the taking risks part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's actually another question from Rani saying, so since like the hackathon's online, so instead of actually pitching it, we had to submit a video pitch of us
All right.
recording the pitch. Yeah, so do you have any tips for making pitching videos?
Oh, that makes it a lot easier. Yeah, I mean, like if you actually have to make a video, I would actually put together some slides and actually write out pretty much what you're going to say. Like you don't have to do it word for word, obviously. It's like generally better if you have bullet points because it's more natural. But I would really write out what you're saying so you kind of hit all the right points. And I would also use this framework. You don't have to use this. You can use like something along these lines. But this kind of really targets all the main questions you want to answer in a pitch. So when someone's pitching, they're really, really interested in is what you're solving, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but they're interested in like, is what you're solving like a really important problem? Is there enough people that are interested in it? Oh crap! Oh. So it's like this problem, like the target market and the market size, and like what are like the different competitors out there, and why are you different to those competitors? Because there's definitely a lot of people that probably have solved that problem as well. So you kind of need to make sure that you're differentiated. Here is the 5th question, to these competitors. And then 6 is like, why is this the best time to do it? So kind of like market timing and stuff like that, because what are the confluence of forces or like themes in the world right now that are happening that will help you be more successful? And then like 7 is like, how you're going to send out your product to the market. So maybe these aren't as relevant actually. So these ones are probably more relevant because these kind of go really into like solutioning and business model. So I don't think that's as important today, but these ones I would do.
Yeah, so the recorded videos is actually for the first round. In the second round, if you make it to the finals, you're gonna do like a live pitch. Do you have any tips for like in terms of pitching and maybe pitching tips for online?
Pitching tips for online. Oh yeah, oh man, online, presenting online is so weird because like, it's like, no, there's not many people who actually have the video. So
Yeah.
you're like talking to yourself. Oh, it's so weird, but pitching online, but it's also easier as well because like you don't get as nervous because like when you're pitching to huge room, there's like all these people and you're like, oh my god, there's so many people, and you get kind of like frozen. I guess that's the difference. But specifically for online, I guess for me, a trick I use when I'm presenting to people is like I kind of pin one person, one window. So I actually did that today. So I pinned your window, and then just like pretend that you're talking to that one person because there's not many people there, and you kind of want to, when you're presenting, you kind of want to imagine as if you're talking to someone, because if you don't look at someone you're talking to, you kind of forget that you're actually saying this to another person. So that's really important. So that's what I do. First I pin like someone to the window, so I kind of pretend I'm talking to them. And what else? I think it's important to prepare quite well, to have like slides or something. You don't have those slides, but like bullet points of things you really want to say, because I don't know how long you have to pitch, but you definitely don't have as long as I did to ramble on about these points. So you really have to hit each of the things you want to say really concisely. Anything else? And I guess that my last tip would be try to have fun with it. For this talk today, like I was a little bit nervous about it because like I don't like presenting that often, and I feel quite nervous. But like what I try to do when I present, I try to channel that nervous energy into like excitement and kind of like to have fun with it and kind of transfer that energy to the people you're talking to. I think that that's really important as well, because like in the end, like it's really hard to get excited about a talk, especially like if it's like online as well. So you have to like put in extra effort and energy. But like I think that really pays off in the end, because like people are more engaged and they'll like the talk a lot better, and they can tell that you care about it and that you're passionate about it. Yeah, can't think of anything else.
Yeah, so the first round is actually like 3-minute video recording of the pitch, and the second round 6 minutes live pitch. So do you have any like things that we need to hit during that 3-minute pitch and the 6-minute pitch, like important things to hit?
Yeah, sure. So I think like Blackbird will probably go through this as well. So Blackbird is probably the best person to ask, because they're like a venture capital company. So like literally see people pitching every day, and they know exactly what the points you should hit. But I guess like I'll try to answer that question. So in terms of like 3 minutes, I would really, really focus on like the customer problem you're solving, what your solution is to that problem, what other people have done, and like how you validated that what you built will actually solve that problem. So that's kind of those things. So I would really focus on like the wonder and explore kind of stuff. So like the problem is an important one, and then your thing solves it. That will be pretty much good enough to get you into the final round, I think. And then in that final round, because you have a bit more time, I think it might be really interesting to talk about like the competitive landscape and how what you're doing is really different to what other people have done before you in the past. And the question about the market window would be really great as well. So like why it's a good and opportune time to do this. I think most of your answers will revolve around coronavirus, but I think it's important to really think about like what exactly is it that the coronavirus does, and what is the change about the world that can really help your solution or make your solution viable in this time. Like things like everybody has to work from home now, everybody's exposed to the internet way more, people play more games now, people are like, you know, streaming all the time, they don't go outside as much, so all these kinds of things. So all these influences kind of make it so that this is like the opportune time for what you're building.
Yeah, awesome. I don't think there's any more questions on the chat at the moment, so I think we'll wrap it up for today.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for the workshop. So there will be another workshop, which is pre-recorded by Blackbird, about more details on going to tips about pitching and stuff like that. So it will be released like 20 minutes later, and we'll send a link on the announcement so everyone can check. Once again, thank you so much for coming, and thanks, Andrew, for all the great tips and workshops today.
Yeah, no worries. You're welcome. I really love coming back to CSESoc, so it's my home. So always happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Cool.
Okay,
All right.
bye.
Have a good time, guys. See you. I'm gonna go eat now. Bye.
Bye.